Hello, this video is going to give you an overview of the inheritance unit that we are going to be covering. This is one of our last big units in C++. Moving over to course sites, if we go to the inheritance and polymorphism folder here, you are actually not going to be required to do polymorphism, but many of you might want to incorporate it. So I'm just going to talk through what I talked through with my students at Centennial, and I'm doing this for Mr. Van Gundy because he's new to this class, and I've organized all the material. So he, because of my negligence in letting him know, he's not as familiar with all of these materials. So I'm going to talk it through for both of us. All right. So here's the deal. You are going to do one last big project. We've got about 2.5 weeks in order for you to complete this. And the reason I'm going to give you some of this information now also is that you can incorporate some of the other concepts such as arrays and data files into this project if you want. So first of all, the project guidelines, if you take a look, these documents are all linked in on course sites as you saw. The project guidelines are here. And the goal is to solve something that's more like a real-world business application. You could form a team. If you do form a team, you want to make sure that you're going to have a little bit more complicated program or more classes to work with. But things that have helped out in the past is to, and I also require that you create a class diagram for the project. And you should do this before you start. It really helps with your organization, and it increases the success of your project, and it reduces the time it takes you to actually write the code. And there are some videos kind of showing this. As you progress through, you might want to make sure that you're keeping snapshots or versions of your program and your class diagram, because if you've got something working and then you make a bunch of changes and it breaks, you always want to be able to revert back to the previous version that you were working with. We will ask you to create a UML diagram that shows the relationship between the classes. This is not difficult. It's in the videos and the slides. It talks about that. You should submit a plan. This is more for if you're doing a team project for who's going to do what, okay? You should also create desk checks before you code. And I would recommend that you create enough examples to thoroughly test your program, because we will be expecting to see that testing when we're done. And to create a spreadsheet to help keep them organized. Like if you're doing something with a bunch of calculations, it's really a good idea to just set up a spreadsheet, let the spreadsheet do the calculations, and then you have a good set of test data to use. You should create a class diagram for the base class and each subclass. You should also create a user interface, which is just basically what are you expecting to prompt the user? Do they have to enter in anything? And they might not if you decide to use data files. But what's your screen going to look like? Just kind of planning ahead. What should it look like is what we're looking for there. And if you should, the more of this you plan, the better. Like if you plan exactly what inputs will be asked, the more that you plan, the easier it will be to write. If you plan a detailed output report using like graph paper to show where your columns and lining up columns and show your formatting, for example, decimals to two decimal places, or money to 2 decimal places as an example. And then you should think of the format of your data in input and output file if you are using one, okay? So those are the project guidelines. If we go back, there are some project ideas right here: a bank account, vending machine, inventory, etc. They are also listed on course sites with more details. I will show you them in a minute. A UML diagram and the hierarchy examples are in the Google Slides. This slide deck right here is what I used to create the videos. And while you're watching the videos, you'll notice that I sometimes use the word COUT for C out and SIN for C in. And that comes from working with some John Deere mentors. That's the way they use the phrasing. And so I go back and forth on that phrasing sometimes. But this is a hierarchy chart. And so that's all we're asking for. It's not anything difficult, but it's just an introduction to this UML diagrams. UML stands for Unified Modeling Language, and they use it in industry to map things out. They talk more about class diagrams in the PowerPoint, and these PowerPoints are used in the videos, and so you need to watch the videos. And so I'm just going through these quickly. The videos also talk you through how to work with a data file, which is another reason why we're throwing this at you kind of right now, because you could actually use this program to do data files. There's also another topic that will be in some of the videos, and that's vectors. A vector is like an array. It starts its indexing at 0, but unlike an array, it can grow and shrink. Those of you that might be familiar with Java, it would be like an array list in Java. And then there is a size method that you can use to determine the number of elements in the vector. There is also a video that talks about vectors. And so the rest of these slides are used with those videos. The videos that I'm talking about, actually let me go back and just finish talking about this document, the project links. If you are a high flyer and you've worked with class development before, like if you've already taken AP Computer Science or maybe Visual C#, you could attempt an advanced project or some polymorphism, and that's what these links are for. I would not recommend this for most people, but it's here if you want a little bit of a challenge, okay? The other thing is there's a series of videos on YouTube. This is a link to them, but I also have posted them back here on course sites. And honestly, you really need to just watch them. You need to watch these videos in order. It talks to you about the zoo example that we're using. It talks about how to create a class, especially if you're not comfortable yet with working with classes. This is a good video to watch. Data from a file that covers, I showed you on the PowerPoint slides, some of the data. It also, on this one, shows you how to use a while statement for into file checking, and then how to read in multiple pieces of data at one time. So I've really tried to not duplicate some of the things that we've talked about before in class with these videos. They are pretty much kind of new topics, but they could all lend themselves to this last program. Vectors is here, and that can be used to replace arrays. You don't have to, okay? Use the vectors, but it's good to be introduced to them. If you decide to create a project that is polymorphic, then you will need to use vectors. And then there's some additional videos here. I haven't gotten the descriptions written in, but for inheritance. So you need to watch the animal class to get the base class. And then we talk about the inheritance class diagram here in video 6. And then the mammal class and the reptile class are your subclasses. This static class variable is another thing, especially if you're going to do like the banking account, or you're going to do like an inventory where you want to keep track of the total amount of something over various classes or various objects. For example, if you want to keep track of total inventory over a vending machine that has drinks versus a vending machine that has snacks, you will probably want to use a static class variable. So again, all of these videos are done in order to set you up for success with this final project, and you really need to watch them all. There are some additional videos that I will put in here. You can email me, probably is the best thing right now. I know I put out a link for my students to fill out a Google form if they wanted some more videos, but it's probably best just to email me if you think you might need an additional video, all right? You are also welcome to email me questions. This is Mr. Van Gundy's first year teaching C++, and he's been doing a great job, but there are just some questions that experience lends itself to for answering. So please feel free to also reach out to me if you would like. Now, I did mention that there was a list of projects, and honestly, I need to post that for you guys, meaning this. On your guys' website, I need to post the list of projects that are available. And that's this list, because there's some additional like pages in your textbook that you can refer to. So I will get that put onto your course sites. These are the projects, payroll, employee, stat class, test grader, etc., and bank account and vending, all of these, that I would recommend that you guys pick from for your projects. If you wanted to do more exemplary, that's these polymorphism programs, meaning this is the more fluff, or just a little bit more challenging, and so they say they're optional because of that. This particular set of files here is past code from previous programs. As you start to work on yours, you might see some of these that will tie in with whatever program that you pick. For example, if you pick a vending machine, this drink machine with a structure and an array would be an example to look at. All right, so the reason that we kind of wanted to introduce this to you now is you could include data files in this project, and you can include arrays. And so if we go back to your units of study, this program could potentially take care of the last program here that you have to do with your arrays, which is the arrays program 2, okay? And it could take care of your data files standard, all right? So it's kind of important that you realize that. So if you want to put everything together, you can, but I would also be cautious of that. For example, I have some students that just said, you know, I just want to do a simple data files program so that I get that done. And so then if that's the case, please use these videos and just pick one of those projects that we have listed here and get the data files done and out of the way, and then you don't have to worry about it for the larger project. All right, that is your introduction to your inheritance. Just a couple more, I had a couple more slides, I think, or just a few more comments on another slide here for some hints. And that is this. Follow the course site's documents. You must create a project that has multiple classes that show inheritance. The best way to be successful is watch the videos and email and ask lots of questions. Do the basics first, then add more functionality for an exemplary grade. Don't get overly fancy. Go simple, basic, get it working, and then consider fancy. However, also don't forget that we will still be looking at, are you formatting money to 2 decimal places? Are you lining up table output? Are you using proper naming convention and white space, and etc.? All right, that should wrap this up. Good luck.